Hey everybody. Well, anybody out there who's a videographer, a photographer, an artist of any kind, probably knows the feeling of losing a piece that you've worked on. In fact, I would imagine that most people, whether they partake in art or photography at all, probably had at least one instance in their life where their hard drive has failed, or they've dropped their phone in the water, or something of the sort, to where they had unrecoverable pictures, data, memories that get lost. Perhaps it was a band recording or something from a garage band, something you'll never get back. These are unfortunate moments in our lives. And ones that remind us of the time that we spent on things before we lost them. Now, I'd like to think about things that were not lost by chance, but lost on purpose. In other words, many of the songs, much of the music, many of the books, writings, stories have been lost to time, not because the actual information was lost, but because it was subverted, pushed down, derailed, propagandized, and basically pushed out of existence because it was too controversial. This may bring to mind book burnings as a great example. As long as mankind has had writings, there have been writings who offended people or bothered people, and therefore these writings would be banished. Books would be literally burned in piles. There were celebratory fires where people would literally burn piles of books because it went against what they thought was the right way to talk or the right thing to believe. Now, this continued, and in modern day, there were already plays ridiculed in the past, shows put on, but once we had television, the same thing happened with movies or television that didn't follow the paradigm. The same thing happened with music, where maybe Elvis was dancing a little too much with his hips. And these goalposts have changed over time. There were laws against dancing to music in many U.S. states, and there still are in some places on the books and around the world. Dancing was considered the gateway to enjoyment. But I digress. My point here is that we've spent so long trying to overcome these things. Our failure to see things for what they are and allow people to express themselves in their own way. And usually the reason that's given for us burning books, for us stopping music, stopping dancing, is danger. Danger. We are endangering ourselves or others. This has always been the reason given. These books are dangerous. They might cause you to think a different way or believe a different way. Now, as we move into the modern, further into the 21st century, we find that this is happening constantly and consistently around the world. It never stopped. But in America, it's a place where we consider ourselves freer. But I suppose that is in the eye of the beholder. If a person goes to work and talks about a certain topic which is too controversial, people may raise an eyebrow or these days even lose their job. And I just finished making a video about this, about censorship and how people may have good intentions but be labeled as a racist, a hater, a bigot, whatever it might be. But this endangerment aspect is always there. That if you talk a certain way, people are going to get hurt. And often this is the case. Propaganda's been used for millennia to send people into battle under the guise that they're protecting their assets or their leaders or their gods. But imagine writing a book and then having this book published and then having someone, whichever agency, come to you and say, look, this book is too controversial. You're not allowed to publish it. So not only are we going to take it off the shelves, but we're going to fine you for it. You're going to have to pay. And you won't be able to share this book with anyone else through written word. This is basically what happens when YouTube decides to cancel or delete or terminate accounts based on controversial topics when they don't actually do any reviewing. Now, there are millions of hours of videos on YouTube. It's impossible for humans, obviously, to go through and analyze each video. So the algorithm does it for us. AI is our master, right? And I don't want to run this one into the ground. It's a topic that's important to me because of my situation, and this has been a long-winded way of saying I spent countless hours researching and learning about psychedelic compounds, various uses for medicinal herbs. In fact, when I go back and watch some of these videos, I don't even remember this information. It's like when we think we go to college or school and we learn things, we know we forget it relatively quickly. But that's why I would take this information while I was mulling it over in my head, and I would convey it and share it in a video format with other people. And often I didn't have a backup copy of these videos. So lo and behold, to my surprise, when I get an email from YouTube all of a sudden out of the blue one day saying, by the way, we removed your video, Canna, Ashwagandha, and Kratom Evening Chat, and not only that, but we're going to give you a strike on your channel. We're going to prevent you from uploading for at least a couple weeks. If you get another strike, your channel's terminated, and we're deleting the video. And so I have no way of even getting that back. And I've done a lot of thinking about this. Sure, if there's somebody out there promoting heavy use of fentanyl or something like that, I can see people, getting upset with it and wanting to have that, eliminated, that video deleted. But the question is, even if somebody is standing up promoting the worst drugs in the world, whose right really is it to tell them not to? Because society reacts the way it reacts. If a book comes out that sponsors violence or hatred, that author's going to hear about it. If a story or a post comes out that is hateful or bigotry, it's going to be called out for what it is. And if people accept it, they accept it, and if they don't, they don't. But it should not be the job of the publisher / YouTube / Google to determine what shows up on a search page or what shows up in your feed for a random videos. I know my channel has been actively suppressed by you, not actively, but rather just circumstantially suppressed by YouTube. I had my channel building pretty well over the last 10 years, and then about a year and a half ago, it just basically flatlined. I haven't gained any new subscribers in probably a year and a half, which is interesting because I know YouTube's purging a lot of accounts as well, but and I'm not here speaking on my behalf saying, oh, my videos are important or I should, be promoted on YouTube. But rather what I'm saying is, I'm a guy who has played by the rules, played honestly and fairly. I don't do this to get millions of views. I don't do this to make millions of dollars. I do this because I like talking about important issues. I consider myself a well-read and researched person on many topics. And one of my specialties is psychedelics, cannabis, and various drugs. And now people like myself have been made to feel dirty, like that's a bad thing to know how these chemicals work in our brain. And many people will dismiss substance use as, well, it's just losers. The pharmaceutical industry is based on these compounds. We have pain in our lives, we have anxiety, we have depression, we have heart disease, we have all kinds of problems that many of these medications and herbs we can benefit from. Because of this, some people have made bold claims that these herbs will cure all of your problems, which is nonsense, and then people like myself get thrown under the bus for even bringing it up. It's the same way with kratom vendors getting harassed because they claim that it cures this or cures that, and I get trapped within them as being a vendor myself, but I'm not promoting any of those things. Many of us are playing the game and caught up in the free speech issue. The ability to discuss drugs is paramount, especially because harm reduction is something that I feel has saved likely millions of lives in the past 20 years. I'm going to guess that Arrowweed Arrowhead.org, the first website and still in existence with trip reports, drug dosages, information. They even have a program where you can send them products, drugs that a person has, and they can test them and they'll post it up on the internet so you can see whether it's safe. I believe they've saved thousands of lives, at least. Even if just people being able to look and research and see what other people have done and say, I don't want to make that mistake. Oh, I should test my products. So it comes down to an issue of life and death. So we have books about drugs, ideas and videos about drugs being suppressed, and meanwhile, the ones that are actually beneficial are getting caught up within that suppression. And it's not just drugs, obviously. Issues with race, issues with creed or religions, the fact that people can't even talk about Judaism anymore, or you're an anti-Semite, even though they're constantly, taking over land there in the Strip. People can't even talk about it. There are so many issues going on that are suppressed that, even though 2 years ago I would have agreed on some of these things, when I was asked, hey, what should we do about speech? Should we tolerate these things? I had to do a lot of soul searching to ask myself, should we allow everything to be caught up in this net of trying to close our ears to what we don't want to hear with this guise that it's somehow protecting the children or protecting the people? So this is just a message from one random YouTuber that talks about particular subjects, tries to do it with a disclaimer. I always say this is not intended to diagnose, prevent, or cure any disease, and I'm only here to talk about my own opinion, and yet I still get caught up in that web. And I wonder how many other people have had their channels shut down, had their ideas silenced, had their websites closed down because they can't show up on the search pages, because they're not in the recommended list, because they're talking about something that mainstream society just doesn't want to hear. And that's fine. Mainstream society can go watch what they want. They can go watch their late night TV and their Jimmy Fallon. But that's not for all of us. And so it's important we stand up for our freedom and our rights and our ability to speak about these topics without being silenced. Thanks for listening. Assuming this video isn't somehow deleted or silenced. Be well.